And here we are, our episode 9 with Andreas Granström, and indeed a grand finale. Crisis, healing, leadership was the theme chosen by Andreas. Crisis, diagnosed with Bipolar Type I, Andreas had to fight through periods of depression and mania. It was so courageous and moving to hear him so openly describe his struggles. Healing, father of 4, a loving father and an impressive work life and career. What defines Andreas is not his diagnosis, but the belief that we should never be prisoners of our existing thought behavior. Learn more about that and his path to healing. And finally, leadership. Honestly, having worked with executive development myself, I thought I had seen all different sorts of perspectives about leadership. But what Andreas means and believes leadership is all about is the most powerful perspective I have ever witnessed. Enjoy this conversation. Afterwards, it took me a while, and I must admit I cried quite a bit of admiration. This is the end of the summer series. Well, no way. Hope you like Churchill. I also think that now this is not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end, but it's perhaps the end of the beginning. Viva vida! Hello, Andreas.
Hello.
I see you are in Stockholm, right? At Klustret.
I am. Yes, that's correct.
So downtown.
It looks like you are at home in Skåne.
I am in Skåne. It's beautiful weather. Yesterday it was like 32 degrees. Unbelievable how warm it was. Today is a little bit more mild weather. And but
yeah.
good.
Yeah,
So
we have perfect blue sky. I would guess it's going to be about 25 degrees today, so I think that's perfect summer day.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. You have to talk later on a little bit more about Klustret and what it is, because I don't think many know what's all about and this beautiful location downtown Stockholm. Andreas, so you just start working your first week, right?
Yes, this Monday. Yeah, today is Friday. I started Monday working again. Yes, it felt good to come back to work actually. For me, yeah.
You want to
it's the end of July here, and you know, in Sweden many people still have vacation.
Yes.
So really, it's like you see it close to this is an office, but I'm completely alone here. I've been more or less alone the whole week.
So that's good with a soft start. And
Yeah.
we want to hear everything about your summer during this conversation, right? But to start with, a little bit how I know you. I mean, I know you from Klustret, and particularly, I think the first time we engaged in something was a 4D conversation, Dreamers, Doers, Designs, and Doubters. There we look at the meta-crisis, and in the meta-crisis, an important area is mental health. So we had you and Amina Odin, that was also a guest previously in this summer series, talking about mental health. That is such an important issue in society today. So we're going to come back to that. And also, I think would like to know everything about you, and particularly the theme that you chose for this conversation, which is crisis, healing, and leadership. So very intrigued what you mean with these words, and so really exciting to have you here, Andreas. And as I do with all the guests, right, is an exercise of memory. So why don't we start with the little Andreas, right? How are you the only child in your family, or do you have siblings? And tell me a little bit about that and your parents and your first impressions of this world and what formed you.
Yeah. Okay, let's start there. So if I guess you could say, if you like take a step back and look at all my childhood, I would say that it was, I had a classic Swedish middle class kind of upbringing in Värmland in the west of Sweden. My father came from a family of farmers, and his parents were farmers, and their parents were farmers. Some of them quite successful. His mother came from a very rich farming family, and my mother, she came from Uppsala, an academic home in Uppsala, but she also had farmers in her ancestry, but also like almost every Swede. And I was their first child in 1980, out of four. So 3 years later came my brother, and then 6 years later my sister, and then 11 years later my little sister. And what can I say about my childhood? My first 10 years we lived in, if I simplify a little bit, we lived in Karlstad, which is the capital city of that province, Värmland. But as I said, my parents, they actually met at agricultural university, and my mother dreamed of living in the countryside. They were both working for a school of agriculture. So she tried to visualize a house in the countryside, and then when I was 10 years old, we moved there to a village named Fagerås, just outside of Karlstad, and then we lived there for 8 years. And overall, yeah, as I said, my childhood was generally, I would say it was happy. My parents were functioning quite well together, although there were obviously always some challenges in any relationship. But yeah, they complemented each other quite well in a sense. My father, maybe with his farming background, he was, and he still is, a very calm, grounded person who seldomly gets stressed. And he usually just says that, yeah, everything is going to work out. Don't worry. While my mother, well, I can say one more thing about my father, and he's a bit on the shy side, I would say. Like, he was not so used to talking in front of people, and where in the background that he came from. And while my mother, on the other hand, she's extremely social. She came from her parents are both extremely social and good storytellers, and my mother is very good with words, and she can tell great stories, and she loves to be in front of a crowd, and she but she also has one thing that she's very open about, that she has always felt that she has to prove herself, that she's like, good enough. So that is something I think that she has had ever since she was a child, and that has been a driving force in her life. So she's very ambitious, I would say, because she has to prove herself all the time. So she has actually achieved a lot thanks to this, but obviously it's also caused her a lot of stress, because she gets very anxious when things are not going as planned, because it has to go well, because her value as a person is dependent on that everything goes according to plan. And then my father would say that no, but it's going to be all right, but and she's worried, and in that sense they completed each other, and
But are you more like your mother? I have a theory here after hearing that. But are you more like your father or more like your mother?
I think it's hard to say. I think I've got a lot from both of them, to be honest. Yeah. But I definitely have some of that proving myself streak from my mother.
Mhm.
But I also have some of that, no, it's going to be all right. So I'm not, for me, I don't get so stressed like my mother when about all the details and stuff. I'm more about when I want something to happen, I believe it's going to happen, and I believe it's going to sort itself out somehow. And then I don't have to go into all the little detail and control. My mother can become a little bit of a control freak, and I'm not at all like that. So,
Andreas, I think in one of our conversations, you mentioned also that you lived in Africa when you were small.
yes, correct. So when I was 4, my parents, I guess, I don't know exactly the story, but they decided that they wanted to do a bit of an adventure. So my father applied for work at the Swedish government, at the part of the government that handles aid to other countries. And then he got job as a teacher and of modern agriculture at a school in Zambia in south of Africa. And there were several Swedes there working. I think there must have been at least 5 Swedish families in the village working at that school and teaching them about how to modern agriculture. The Swedish government also delivered tractors and modern equipment and all that. So they were trying to help the Zambian government to improve their agriculture, I guess. So we moved to Zambia when I was 4 years old. Me, and then I had my little brother Klaus, who was 2 years younger than me, and my parents. And then while we were there, my mother got pregnant actually. So we had to. My father stayed there all the time, but my mother, and the rest of us, we went to Sweden to deliver the baby, Ida, and then we came back to Zambia again. And so, but in total, it was about 2 years time. And I think that time in Zambia was very important for me and how I look at the world and how I relate to other people. Because for one thing, I mean, obviously we were in a small town in Zambia, and there were many poor people there. There were people living in a hut village just behind our house. They had no electricity, and they were just sitting and eating by the fire every night. So and then there were some African families that were a little bit middle class, you could say. They were teachers and so forth. And I hanged out with kids from all these places in the area. And obviously, since I was white, I guess I was different. And I think white people were generally looked up to, in Africa. And also I had a lot of really interesting toys. So I became the center of attention there where we lived, and many African kids would come every morning to knock on my window, basically, and want to play with me. So that was my life for 2 years. They would come at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and they wanted to play with me, and we were a group of usually like 5 to 10 kids, just doing things together in the area. We renovated a little old house that was falling apart in our backyard, and we found materials and we renovated it. And I was just 5 years old, but we were doing this, and so we had our little clubhouse there in our backyard, and they became my family and my community. And yeah, I think that was my first. I imagine that's my first experience of community, like a real community and belonging and friendship. And so I think I learned so much there, and I don't know if that's the reason, but all my life I have always wanted to build community and have community and belong to communities, and feel the real deep relationships with people. Yeah.
That explains. That explains. And I think we're going to come back to that in your passion for things like Klustret and building a community that I think is very close to your heart.
Mm.
It must have been hard then to leave Africa and then come back to Sweden, or was it an easy transition?
I can't say that I really remember if I thought it was easy or not. I don't know, maybe at that age, things just happen and you just accept things. I was 6 years when we came back to Sweden and I was about to start school. I very vividly remember the day when we left Africa because we drove with a car through the village and all the black kids were running after our car, you know. And then I have a picture of myself when I starting school a couple of months later, and I'm not looking happy on that picture. So I imagine that it was hard, and I for sure it was hard for my parents. Actually, much harder than for me, because they went from a really nice life in Africa. They had everything they needed, and they had people working in the house. And then in Sweden, they were alone with 3 kids, and they had to leave them at the kindergarten in the morning and fetch them in the afternoon and manage their works and get me into school. And it was a very tough life for them, and they were both working 100% all the time. So yeah.
So a good transition so far you remember, but if we go back to the theme you chose, crisis, healing, and leadership, what does it mean with crisis, and when? I'm intrigued, as I said.
Yeah, of course. So, yes, so let me explain that a little bit then. So, as I said, my childhood was happy, but there was an important aspect of my childhood that I haven't said because we didn't come to that part was school. So, in school, I don't know why, but I was kind of a little bit insecure, and I didn't feel so safe, and I was sometimes bullied by people, but not on an extreme level. But I think it kind of turned me into like, okay, I'm gonna show them, and I became very good at all the subjects in school. But it also came very easy for me. It was no problem for me and especially when we moved to the countryside, that all the other kids were from most of the other kids were from farmer families or from craftsmen, and they didn't have so much like academic experience in the family. So I was like the star in the class, really. And of course that made me even more a target for bullying. But I became very good at all these subjects, and it was my kind of safety in a way. But then in like high school and even after that in university, like I was never really challenged in school at all. I always had almost best grades, and I don't say that to boast, because I think it actually had a negative impact on me. Unfortunately, you could say that school failed me, even if I had almost the best grades in every subject, because they never challenged me. So when I came out of university, and actually one more thing, like during my childhood, I would avoid activities where I got challenged because I wasn't used to being challenged. So football, when the other players were better than me, so no, I don't want to play football. And I played some instruments, and I stayed for like 2-3 years, and then it starts to become harder. It's like that, It's easy in the beginning, and then I would change to another instrument, and that was kind of like a pattern in my youth, and I couldn't understand it then. I didn't see it until I was an adult. But when I came out of university and started my first job, then I ran into a wall, really, because working was not at all the same thing as school. There are aspects of what you learn in university and school that are very useful in your work, of course, like writing and spelling and counting numbers, etc., etc. But there are also many other aspects in a job, like for example, yeah, leadership and handling colleagues, collaborating, things that, to be honest, I hadn't learned much of that in school.
Correct. Because you say that, I really resonates with me in my own experience. Let me see if you agree. In some ways, I had similar experience. I was really good at school, especially when I moved from São Paulo to Rio de Janeiro. I was a little bit shy, new school, and so I dedicated to school, and I really had the best grades all the way until actually the first shock is when I came into the university. From being the best in a quite big school, but I was all of a sudden, I looked up and really smart people and really hard, right? Then I need really to study as I never thought I would need. So for me, actually going to the university was like, I thought, because there is this big exam in Brazil, that after I pass that, life is going to be easy. It's just got harder, right? So I feel there may be the same type of thing that it starts then to be very challenging.
Some point.
Yeah, at some point, yes.
Mm.
I think maybe it's quite normal for many of us. Yeah, right?
To be honest, I'm not saying that I'm not that super smart, actually. But I think that the level that of requirement in even at the Royal University of Engineering here in Stockholm, it was too low. They required too little of us. I'm sure there were, and I'm sure that there are probably classes and universities where I would have been challenged, but I wasn't in the one I did, which was computer science.
Okay, but your challenge came more when you came into the work life. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and this is going to happen for sure. If you cannot go through life without challenges. It's impossible. Sooner or later, you're going to hit them. And actually, it's much better if you hit them when you're younger. The younger, the better. So that you get used to it and learn strategies to cope and understand and like go through them, right? So when I was 25, around that age, I started work life, and I started to experience extreme anxiety because I was so afraid of failing in the job. And I had never failed before. So I could have, it was anxiety. I wasn't able to work. I sat at my computer and pretended to work. I couldn't because I was so stressed and anxious. And I couldn't sleep at night. I got my muscles were like really painfully, like, what do you call it? Well, so my tense, my whole body was tense, and I remember the first time it happened, it took me about 1 month to get out of it. And thankfully, I had a great manager at that time. I was developing I was a web developer for a Swedish bus company, and I had taken on this, and I felt that I've taken on too much. I mean, I'm not as good as they. I convinced them to bring me on, but this is too much for me to chew. I will fail. This is a catastrophe, and I was like that for a month. But I don't remember exactly, but I was able to produce something. And then I had the meeting with my manager, and I told him that I felt a bit stressed and so forth, but he looked at what I had done, and he was like, but this is great stuff that don't worry, there's no stress, take your time. And he supported me, and he said that it's completely normal to feel that way sometimes. And then he actually got me back on track, and I had a couple of months working there because it was just a project, but that was actually one of my most like creative and productive periods in my work life. After that, but I had to first go through 1 month of extreme anxiety and stress. And this was a pattern for a long time in my life. Every time I started something new, I would end up in this extreme anxiety and stress, especially when I was responsible for a long-term project with if it's a deadline tomorrow or next week, it's fine. But if it's like in a month or 6 months, then it's really, then my mind just, starts to imagine that catastrophe. And yeah, so this was like my first feeling of crisis, and I went into a pattern really where I was going up and down, up and down. I was working and I was delivering sometimes, and then I was really, really stressed. I would procrastinate a lot. I would just sit and read the news and stuff, and then I would feel even worse because I'm fooling my boss that I'm working. And I had I don't remember when I started to call it a depression, but at some point one of my bosses gave me some time with a psychiatrist and so that I would to go through it a little bit more deeper and understand what was going on, which was good. And I think maybe then there was a point when one doctor said that, and it was connected with the company where I was working. He said that I think you're in depression, so I would recommend that you take some antidepressants. So I think from when I was around 27, 28, on and off I was taking antidepressants because I would fall into these quite deep depressions really. And then going further into this, I took on. I have something in me which is very, it may be from my mother, very, you say, ambitious. Yeah, there is a force in me that is very ambitious. So even if it's even if I'm hurting and I'm in depressed and everything, I take on the next challenge. Actually,
so you have difficulty to say no.
I don't know. I have a drive that just so I can say no if something isn't interesting. But for example, so I was working at one of Sweden's biggest newspapers, and it was just like a 1-year job. And then when it finished, an old boss of mine said to me, they have this really interesting position at the media group owning this newspaper. It's like they're going to create a small internal consulting team that are going to do change management in the whole, it's a big company, it's like 10,000 people. Schibsted is the company name. They're based in Norway. They were the owners of this newspaper, Aftonbladet. And so I applied to that, knowing that this is a very challenging position, and I was able to I landed the job, and okay, and then suddenly I was going to run change management projects in different parts of Schibsted, and I worked in many very interesting places like Sportbladet is the most famous sports magazine in Stockholm, in Sweden, I would say, and I met famous people there working there. Some of Sweden's most famous journalists, and so forth. But obviously now the stakes were high, and this created a lot of stress for me. And I actually, in some sense, it's amazing that I lasted so long as I did in the job. I think it was after about 2.5 years that I broke down completely. But in the last project I did, and that was because my colleagues in that particular project were not treating me well, and then I just broke down. I fell handlessly, and I got prescribed some antidepressants again, and then after a couple of weeks on those antidepressants, I was on sick leave. I started to feel really, really well. And I was full of energy again. And I had lots of ideas. I was talking with my friends. Wow, I have so many business ideas and blah, blah, blah. And then I couldn't really sleep at night because I had so many ideas. So I got up at night and I wrote down, I wrote things. I even wrote a speech that I thought, oh, wow, this I should have, I should send this somewhere. Speech, a wonderful speech, I thought. Anyway, I was writing in the night. In the end, I could barely sleep. But I called my colleagues, my change management colleagues, and I said, I'm feeling good now. And they were going to have a big conference. They were running a big conference. So I said, I want to join the conference. But you're on sick leave. No, but I'm fine now. I'm good. Let me join. And I took the train, and the conference was in Oslo, in Norway. So I took the train to Oslo, and all the train trip I was writing. It was like just bursting out of me. And I came to the conference, and during that conference, I was on fire. You know, I helped out, and I even took. I hadn't been part of the preparation, but I was so in such a good mood and had so much energy. So my colleagues let me have some sessions and so on. But then after the conference, one of my colleagues said, "Andreas, now you have to calm down. I see you. I recognize it in myself. I've been there. Now you need to take it easy now, because otherwise it can go the wrong way." And that night, I was still in Oslo. I couldn't sleep for the whole night, and my brain was just working. And sometime at like 4 o'clock in the night, I started to get really worried. What's going on here? You know. So the next day I had a meeting with my superior boss, and he said said that I think I need to take a break. Actually, I'm not able to sleep, and something's going on. And I took the flight back to Sweden, and all through that flight, I had visions, very vivid visions of, I don't remember exactly, but I was in a plane, but I also felt like I was like flying without the plane, kind of, as if I was a bird in the sky. And I also had visions of art, different kinds of artwork, and all kinds of things coming and going. And then I started thinking that I had entered some kind of altered state, and that and I landed in Stockholm, and my mind continued working on this hypothesis. So basically, I created like a story, which was that human beings, we have a like higher state that we can enter, and most people don't, but some do. And now I have done it. I've been able to enter that altered state, and I could kind of like feel around me that I see this person. He's also in that altered state, and I started to fantasizing and just trying to understand what was going on, right, and making a story around it. And then I remember I called one of my previous bosses who knew me very well, and he said, and I talked at length of what was going on, and he said to me, "Andreas, let's meet and have lunch." So we met up for lunch, and then he said, "Andreas, I think that you need to talk to a psychiatrist." And because something is going on here that is not normal. The way you talked to me the other day, this is it might be something serious. And I have already called a friend who is a psychiatrist, and I have a meeting booked now in 1 hour. So let's go there together. That was what an amazing savior, really. I mean, isn't it? Yeah, the power of having friends. So we went there, and yeah, they could conclude that I was in psychosis, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
She said you could hear voices as well. Is that correct?
Not this time.
Mhm.
So yeah, so actually, later on I understood that this was my first manic episode, actually. But I've had in my life I have had 3 manic episodes. This was the first time. But then the doctors thought that it was because I was taking antidepressants, and but that was why I had gone into this state, So they put me on some medication, and I got out of it. Within a couple of weeks I was back to more or less normal again. And I actually went back to work, but I had to take some medication. But as I said, if they would have thought that it was a manic episode, then they would have put me the label bipolar disorder, and they would probably have treated me for that. but now it was more like they treated me. They took away the antidepressant, gave me some acute medicine to get down, and then and that was it at that time. But then for the next decade, I would say I was just going up and down, up and down. I tried different kinds of medications, and I still had a career. It was working quite well for me, and I always was blessed with very understanding bosses that always helped me and supported me and believed in me. And so even though I might have a week now and then when I was very depressed and maybe had to take a couple of days off, my career actually kind of moved forward anyway. But what I did when I was about 35 was, because my career in the beginning was actually in kind of like business development and management position. And I thought that when I was about 34, 35 that this is not working for me. I'm just going up and down and getting stressed and burned out. I need to find another career. And then I I was looking for what to do, and I started my business. And at first I thought, oh, change management, I like it. I'm going to try to make myself. I'm going to be a consultant in change management. But I don't know. I wasn't able to get any projects in that at all. But I did get a project at my previous employer, which was about analytics, and then I met consultants that were working with business intelligence, and they said to me, "You would be the perfect business intelligence consultant. You should try it." So I applied but I thought, okay, I don't have much experience in that. But I applied for a consulting firm within BI, and they hired me and said, "You learn this quick enough. We'll teach you." And that's happened. So that's how I changed track into business intelligence. And I was working as employed for a couple of years, and then I started my own business. And so since I was about 38 years old, I've been running my own little company and as a consultant within business intelligence. And I see this now. I must admit that I'm not. Business intelligence in itself doesn't turn me on, but it can be used to make fantastic things. Actually, business intelligence is about making sense of data and creating value from data, which is now AI is doing for us. So it's a field which it has great, obviously, great potential and lots of use cases. So what you can do with it is really interesting. But for me, what I missed, and I still kind of miss when I'm working with business intelligence, is human interaction and leadership and management and change management and those kind of things that I was doing before. I really like those parts. Now I'm doing a lot of programming, writing SQL code, and creating data infrastructure and stuff like that. But in some sense, business intelligence became my. It was like a place to go just to protect myself. Yeah, and my life became more stable afterwards, because it is less stressful to work as an engineer, I would say, compared with being a change management consultant.
Yes, if I understand, I mean, there were several of these crises, right? And you start taking medicine, and you had always good bosses around you. But then there was a moment that you have been diagnosed with bipolar type I.
Yes. So in 2019, I was in my company starting a new project with a famous Swedish startup called Funnel.io, and they were around 100 employees when I entered, but they didn't have any business intelligence at all. More than they had, the programmers had made some stuff on their own, but they were not business intelligence developers. So I was hired as a consultant to build up their professional business intelligence platform. And this stressed me immensely. I started there, and I was really good mood when I started, but then after a month, I was so anxious. Am I going to be able to deliver on this and so forth? I was very stressed. I was extremely stressed. And I was at one point, but now I had, matured a little bit, and I said, okay, I'm going to talk to my boss, my manager about this, who hired me. So I called him and asked if I could have a meeting. And I told him what was going on, and I told him about my history of depressions and stress reactions, and then that is one of the most fantastic meetings I've ever had. And of course, I knew that he was a very empathetic person. I already knew him. He was a fantastic boss. He was the CTO at Funnel at the time, and he just said that, Andreas, from everything I've seen so far, you are exactly the person we need for this job. And I believe 100% in you. But I can see that I have not given you the support that you need. So let's book immediately, as soon as possible. We book a meeting to look at what. Yeah, he called it a retrospective. Look at what have we done so far. What can we learn from it? How can we move forward from that? So that was an amazing meeting, and I really felt so accepted as a person, even with all my dark sides, that I was so ashamed of, being my anxiety and stress and not being able to handle the situation. With that said, I continued working there. I was still stressed. And actually, just like 1 month or so after that meeting, I started to have, I went into another manic episode. Basically. And that time I did hear, I don't know if I heard voices, but I felt like the universe was speaking with me. And one of the things that it was telling me was that I was about to die. And I had about 1 week left to live. But then, since, when you're in a manic episode is a kind of psychosis. And what I have experienced now, what I can see is that psychosis, it changes all the time. So that your understanding of the world is different. Every hour it changes. I think in some sense you are very deeply connected with your far down in your unconscious brain, in a sense. So that maybe usually the brain filters out these weird ideas, but now the filter is gone. You just dive down right into your unconscious brain that can throw up almost anything. I'm guessing it's the same kind of experience as if you're taking some drugs like LSD, for example. And so my view of the world was changing all the time, but I was completely sure that I was about to die. And I can tell you very crazy things about the whole episode. For a moment, I thought that I guess some kind of parallel to the Jesus story, that I have to die for the world to continue. That was an idea that came into my mind. I thought that God has decided that I must die for the world. And that's very typical of a manic episode, because you put yourself in the center of the universe in one way or another. Now I'm hearing a lot of wind there.
Is it better?
No, it's the same. Anyway.
So,
I thought I was about to die. I went home. I didn't say anything to my wife and kids about it. I remember we were watching like some children's things on the TV, and I was sitting with my 2 kids, and I was really like trying to enjoy this, because I thought it was the last evening of my life. and we had dinner and all that, and and I kissed them farewell in the evening before they went to bed, and thought this is the last time I see them. And then I thought, and I lay awake all that night thinking that this is when I die, but it didn't happen. And the next day, my wife called an ambulance because I was acting very strangely in the morning. And so she called an ambulance, and then I spent 10 days in the hospital, yeah, in a psychiatric ward. So that's, yeah.
That's when you got your diagnosis. Is that correct?
Actually, it's funny, but even then, they thought it was like just a psychosis. Uh, but I think after a couple of months later, then I got the diagnosis. Yeah, yeah, because there was a bit like back and forth, and so yeah.
In a correspondence between you and me talking, so you said something about not being prisoners of our existing thoughts, patterns.
Mm.
I think this is a beautiful thing, but I'm also intrigued with how do you manage that today? I mean, this is a very important thing, Andreas. I think what you said in one of our emails, that we are not prisoners of our existing thought patterns. But hearing you now with those episodes, and so it must require from you a lot of strength. And also one thing that I want you to describe a little bit, because we haven't touched yet, is your loving family. You have 4 kids, right? And Muriel that acted and called the ambulance, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit, you today, Andreas, because I think I understand now the crisis and what you have been through. But then we have the healing.
Yes. All right. But shall we take a look at the family?
Yes. Everything.
Yes. So in 2008, just when I was about to start the job as a change management consultant, I was also looking out for a partner, like my life partner. I was like, now it's done. I was 28 years old. Now I want to find the love of my life. And I was dancing and doing dancing classes, and I was traveling a lot, and I was trying to meet as many potential candidates as possible, and I also registered on the Royal Institute of Technology. They have a page where you can find a language partner. It's called Tandem. So you meet and have a coffee and you talk, and you teach each other languages. So and then my future wife Muriel, she found me there on that page. She was a 23-year-old doctorate student from Nicaragua, studying here in Sweden, in Stockholm, and she reached out, and we met and had a pizza, I think, the first night, and but that was, it wasn't the date, but so we were. She was going to teach me, like, I wanted to practice Spanish, and she wanted to practice Swedish. But it quickly turned into something else. I got quite interested immediately, so I invited her for a drink a couple of days later, and then we went to a party together, and and then suddenly we were a couple, and we married after 2 years. I felt immediately with her that I found her. This is the one for me. I'm sure. Like I thought she was so beautiful. Of course, she's a very beautiful woman, but and attractive, but also very intelligent. And I noticed immediately that she is very like hardworking, and she was very focused on her studies. Actually, before she met me, she was working until midnight every day at the office. But then she met me, and then her colleagues were complaining like, Well, you're not in so much at the office any longer. Yeah, but but she's has she comes from a relatively poor background in Nicaragua, but her mother is extremely hardworking, and I mean I've never seen anyone work as hard as her mother, to be honest. And Muriel has got quite a lot of that. Yeah. So I thought that not only do I like her and she's attractive, but I think she's going to do very fine here in Sweden, career-wise.
And today you guys have 4 kids.
Yeah, we married in 2010. Bray came in 2011, and then Ziania came in 2014, and then I think for a couple of I wanted more children because my wife. Well, because I come from a big family, but she was a little bit reluctant. But then in 2022 she changed her mind, 2022, and she accepted that we can have another child. And I think actually, after I had 2 manic episodes in 2019-20, and I know because she's told me that for some time there she was not sure if our relationship was going to last. But I mean, you can understand that she was actually really thinking about that. Is this actually going to work out? I mean, this guy is going crazy. But but then actually I got some medication, and I don't know if, and I think it's a combination of medication and also thought patterns that have helped me to actually not have any further problems since the beginning of 2021. I don't have any symptoms almost like from depressions or manic episodes. So in 2022 she had obviously decided that she was going to stick with me, and we had our 3rd child, Elessar, and then we thought, and she said, "Oh, he's so alone down there. We need to get another one." And then we got our last Nayeli last year, 2025.
That's such a beautiful story, Andreas.
But now we're done. We're done.
And not only that, I mean, I heard from you that I don't think many in Sweden have a paradise like you guys have on the other side of the ocean, a house in Nicaragua, right?
Yeah, and not only Nicaragua, it's on a beautiful tropical island called Ometepe, and we have our own little beach there with views on the volcano in the background. So it's
Oh my gosh.
really a special place, very special place actually. It's a backpacker paradise right now. There are not much tourism really, but there are quite a lot of backpackers coming there.
So maybe one possibility for the future is simply to move to that paradise, or?
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, we had that idea for a while, but to be really honest, that island is too hot for me.
Okay.
I can have a couple of weeks, but not more. I'm a Viking. Vikings can't live there.
Andreas, crisis and then healing, as I see, is healing together with Muriel, together with building a family, together with good bosses, and also finding, how to say, the right medicines and the right treatment. But also, I think a recurring theme discussing with you is that not becoming prisoner of your thoughts. And there is a moment that I remember from the 4D conversation. As I understand, there is a book that you read that made a strong impression on you. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So in jumping back in time again here to 2008, I had 3 years going up and down and lots of depressions and anxiety and stress. And I was trying to understand what was going on and why this was happening to me. And I was reading lots of different books. And then one day, I don't know how, but I found this book by American psychologist Carol Dweck. And the book that I found, she has many books that she has published, but that one was Self Theories. And in Self Theories, she talks about, it's like a scale where you can basically put yourself. On one end, you have the fixed mindset, and on the other end, you have the growth mindset. And she found that all of us have both. Sometimes we are in the growth mindset. Maybe I'm very confident repairing cars, and I'm in growth mindset when I'm repairing cars, but then I have to write something, and then I'm completely lost and feel, and then I enter fixed mindset. Could be, So you can, but this is something. But anyway, she could identify that you can be dominated by one side or the other. So she could, and when I read the book, she also writes about her experiments that she's done. A fixed mindset means basically that you think that you're either intelligent or not, or you're either good with repairing cars or not, and you can't change it. You're born intelligent, and that's it, And what she found is so interesting, because how do you develop that thought that you can't improve? She found that depending on how we are raised and how we are treated by our parents and our teachers, we're going to develop different kinds of thought patterns, either towards the fixed mindset or the growth mindset. Just very quick, I can tell you just one of her experiments. So she would take random bunch of kids, and she would split them into two groups. So they're equal in every way. These two, they're randomized. But one group, for 1 month, they would have math class, and they would get both very easy, a bunch of easy exercises, but also very challenging exercises. For 1 whole month, every single day they would get some exercises that they were not able to complete. They were above their level, and the teacher would say, "You did well done there. You worked so hard. You really tried. That was really good." In the other class, they would get only simple exercises that they could easily solve, and the teacher would say, "Oh, you're so smart. You solved the exercise. You're so smart." 1 month later, after this treatment, they would both get the test. The tests start with a couple of easy math exercises. Everyone solves them without problem. Then comes a couple of quite hard exercises, and some that are actually impossible for the kids to solve. They are above their level. What happens? Obviously, the ones that have exercised on hard, challenging exercises and gotten this kind of feedback all the time, they try as hard as they can to solve them, and maybe they solve a couple of them, miss a few. The other group, they just crash. They haven't been challenged for a month. They think they are superstars, and suddenly they can't solve a problem. And then after that comes a couple of other easy exercises. Now the group that had the challenges for a month, they just run through them easily, no problem at all. The group that had this easy time, they should be able to do those exercises, but they fail now. They can't do them because they feel so bad. They think they are not smart any longer. And this is how they were the same 1 month earlier. So this is how you develop thought patterns that can be extremely negative for you in certain circumstances, right? And I know that it was very important for her that after this, obviously all the kids got to go through this challenging thing, so that she would get them, all these students that had been learning the wrong thought patterns, she taught them the right thought patterns afterwards, so everyone was fine afterwards. But you can really see how you as a person can develop this kind of fixed mindset that I'm intelligent or I'm not. And then when you meet a challenge, you think that, oh shit, I'm not intelligent. and then you fall. And I went through so many years in school, and I wasn't challenged all the way. And I think when I read that book, I saw that I'm the school book example of a fixed mindset. That's what's going on here. And then I set myself the objective to turn my mindset into a growth mindset.
So this is your practice today, that maybe you have read the book and you see now I'm acting as a fixed mindset. How does it work now? Because it changed you in terms of seeing who you are, right?
Yeah, I think one important thing that changed for me was my view on being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
So you can read a book, and it's not like you're not going to change your thought patterns just by reading the book,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I understood that I need to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm.
I need to learn how to handle challenges. I have to learn, and only by me taking on challenges, I can actually learn those thought patterns that I need to learn. So from that moment, I think I started to challenge myself much more than I had previously, taking on things like, I was a president of a housing association, and I was the president of a preschool, and I took on different kinds of responsibilities, and also in my work where I would be challenged, even if I was scared.
Yes.
And of course, sometimes I got very stressed because of my fixed mindset. I got scared of failing, and I got stressed and all that. But slowly I can see now clearly that now I'm definitely more growth mindset than I am fixed mindset. It's very, very different now. And you asked how it works. Well, I think you can never get rid of old thought patterns. I think they'll always be there. Obviously, this was something that I learned when I was in my childhood. It's very strongly imprinted in me, this fixed mindset way of thinking, right? But I am on my guard always when those kinds of thoughts come. I can see them now. Like,
Yes, you inspire me so much because now I know how everything fits in. And I mean, when you say about taking challenges, I want also to talk about your CEO role at Clustered. But before doing that, and also discuss leadership, which is the last, crisis, healing, and leadership. But before doing that, you take a lot of things, many of the times completely pro bono, because of you think it's important. One of them is that you're volunteered for the suicide line. Can you tell a little bit about that and what you do there?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually, I have to say that I'm actually taking a break from it right now.
Yeah.
Because there were too many things going on, especially when we got our fourth child. But
I understand that.
I'm actually still officially a volunteer. I'm just on pause right now.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, so I'm on the suicide line on Mind, just like Tina, who was also interviewed by you some weeks ago.
Yes.
And the suicide line is Mind is it's a non-profit organization that's funded by companies and individuals. It's very successful. I would say they have I think they have 30 or 40 employees, so it's a big organization, and about 700 volunteers taking phone calls and taking chats from. It's called the suicide line, but anyone can call it. So if you sit on the line, so when I was doing it, it was 4 hours every 2 weeks, and when you sit on the line, you can have one call from a lonely person that wants to talk to somebody, and then the next call is someone that is crying and has pills on the table next to her, just about to take suicide. And I guess and it's the last desperate call for help in a way. Yeah, and all in between, really. I mean, it can be. Some people feel quite well. They call anyway because they maybe they were miserable for a couple of months ago, and they got into the habit of calling and continue calling. But anyway, I took on this challenge. I also I wanted to challenge myself, and it was in 2024 that I had thought about joining Mind for several years earlier, but then I felt that I'm not stable enough. I'm depressed every second month myself. Can't work on the suicide line. But in 2024, I had been very stable for 3 years, and I thought that this is not only for one thing is just to give back in a way. But now I am able to handle my issues, so now I can help others handle theirs. And obviously with personal experiences, it's very powerful when you're on the phone and talking with someone. But also I thought that this is something that could be such an exciting and interesting challenge for me to handle this kind of conversation.
Again, Andreas, such a big source of inspiration you are. And another thing that you take on, and coming back then to leadership, crisis healing leadership. Can you tell a little bit why leadership is so important for you? What is good leadership for you? And also tell a little bit, I mean, cluster that you have behind, that's a wonderful community, back to the thing from your childhood in Zambia, right? Where you found this sense of community as being important for you. And taking the role of CEO, that is also something very important for the whole organization. So what is good leadership for you? And why are you doing that? Because you have a regular job as well.
Yes. Yeah. Gustrit is an association run by its members, and no one is getting paid, not even me, that is the CEO. But every member contributes in different ways. But regarding leadership, I think, first of all, I just think that leadership is so incredibly important. I mean, where the world goes, where our society goes, depends on its leaders. So, we really need good leaders, and I feel, especially in this time, with so many changes going on, with especially technology and AI, and I want my world to live in a prosperous and well-functional society that is not gonna collapse. But then we really need good and strong leaders to make that happen. It doesn't happen on its own, and we've seen societies that, we've seen what bad leadership does. Look at China with Mao. Look at Soviet Union with all their leaders over many years, and Russia, and now the United States, I think, as well, is not being very well led, to be honest. And that kind of leadership, that can lead to collapse, society collapse, especially with all the challenges going on now with the climate crisis, and also AI, and the lack of resources. We're using up all the resources in the world right now. So we need more strong and good, great leaders. And I have just decided that I'm going to try my best to become one of them. But so I'm just trying, and let's see where that ends up. But I think we all have a responsibility for our society, although many people don't agree on that. But yes, we do, actually, each and every one of us. So I think that each and every one of us that has the ability has to try to lead our society. And leading means obviously not just standing in front of people and telling them what to do. A big and maybe the most important part of leadership, I think, is actually to understand the situation, to have a clear understanding of the situation, so that you can put in the right measures, so that you can do the right thing. I know that Einstein said something like this, that okay, if the world is going under if you got to know that the world is going under in 1 hour, what would you do? And then he said that, well, first I'm going to spend 55 minutes trying to figure out why it's going under and what's going on. And then when I found the reason why it's going under, then I'm gonna spend the last 5 minutes solving that. And so leadership is, many people I think get it in the other direction. It's like, first you stand forward people and tell them what to do, and then you're a leader. But no, you have to know what needs to be done. Otherwise, the leadership is for nothing. So and then at Klustret, I think also a leader needs to obviously like get out the best in everyone. And it's not about making the decisions really, but it's about the organization as a whole, or the group as a whole, doing the right things. And the ideas doesn't have to come from the leader; they can come from anywhere. And we're all leaders in a way, right? We lead each other, but I think that to get out the best in every person, you need to, and I base this on a book that I read about motivation, actually, which is based on psychology and research, that to get this like inner force, in like inner motivation, a person needs to feel that there is a higher purpose that they really like and align with, that they are mastering something, and that they have autonomy. And then you can get real motivation. Autonomy means that they themselves make the decisions. So as a leader, I don't think I should tell them what to do. I should ask them, what do you want to do? How can we have this together here. We're building this together. We're creating this. We're building this cluster, this community together. How would you like to contribute to this?
Yes, this is so strong. You know, I'm making sense of the whole theme that you have, crisis, healing, and leadership. And I'm really understanding why it's so important. And I can say, being a member of Cluster, that thank you for all the good work and fantastic work you are doing for this community. And what I think is the beauty also is that together with leadership, another thing that's close to my heart is actually communityship, which is a term actually from a good friend Henry Mintzberry, that he talks warmly about communityship. And you capture so well the two things, leadership and the reasoning for that, and communityship. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldo.
I'm thinking a little bit back to you. We discussed so many things, and I understand that more and more why and how we don't need to become prisoners of our thoughts, especially if we want to move from a fixed into a growth mindset, right? I'm thinking, as we start to wrap up a little bit, anything that I missed to ask, or do you like to discuss and bring up? How was your summer, for instance, now that you...
It's been so, to be honest. Yes, I worked very, very hard this spring, because I run my own business as a consultant, but I'm also the CEO of Clustret, and I also have 4 kids, out of which one is 1-year-old and the other is 4-year-old. And so this spring was, I think, one of the toughest ones I've ever had in the sense of workload. But mentally I was always good, actually, all through this time. So that was good. But when I now when we entered summer, I think I was a bit exhausted already, and then yeah, we decided to do like a road trip with the family in Europe, which was fun. It was fun when we met with friends in Germany and in the Netherlands, and we had a great time with them. But the thing when you're in that kind of a trip is like, okay, you have to drive a lot with 4 kids in the car. At night, you sit up and talk with your old friends that you haven't met in a while. In the morning, the 1-year-old wakes up and wants to get feed, and also you're not used to the beds maybe in some places that you so I didn't get much sleep during those 8 days.
You have to take vacation of the vacation now.
Oh yes, and to be honest, when I came back from that trip, I fell down into something that was very close to a depression actually, and that was the first time I had experienced that for 5 years. So I spent about 1 week very, very low. It was not. I have been much, much worse earlier, but this was, as I said, like first time in 5 years that I felt this bad actually. But I told you maybe we need to postpone this interview, but I fortunately I was able to pull me up by my bootstraps. What do you say?
I must say that this is truly a grand finale. I'm here in my head thinking now that we have had, this is the 9th and final episode of the summer series, how many things really connect so beautifully in your story. So really from the bottom of the heart.
Thank you very much, Rado. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's fantastic. I've listened to everything except the last one, and every episode has been fantastic. Good. And I think, yeah.
And we are meeting soon.
We meet soon again. Yes. Okay.
Face to face. Stay here for a second.
Okay.
Bye.